We are about 2 minutes away from starting. If everyone could just keep their audio off until you have a question, you can open up later today, this morning or evening or middle of the night. I see some people, it's the middle of the night already. But we'll be starting in about 2 minutes. I'm Barbara Conley, the secretary of the IOPTP. All of you should have gotten emails from me previously. It's nice to see pictures of people that I've been corresponding with. And I am writing your names down so that after the webinar, if you need a certificate of attendance, you can email me and we are sending out the certificate of attendance. It's not a CEU, but it just documents that you had an hour-and-a-half webinar that you attended. I have 6:30 or the beginning time of the webinar. I'll give everyone 1 more minute to log in. And if everyone would go ahead and turn their video on, I'm sure everyone would love to see pictures at the beginning. So go ahead and start your videos. I see familiar faces. Hello. Okay. Good morning. Like I say, good morning or evening or middle of the night, wherever you are. We have people who have been attending these webinars from probably, I would say 35 to 40 countries. So definitely a worldwide webinar. Okay, I see a couple more people coming on. Okay, so with that, we can stay on time. Let me go ahead and just get started. Are you ready, Dale, for me to go ahead and do the introductions? Okay, well, we certainly are excited that all of you are here for our 3rd webinar of the IOPTP. We started these webinars back in May and have had increasingly larger numbers of people coming. We're just really excited that we're able to do this for all of you as members of the IOPTP or potential members of the IOPTP.
No.
Good morning.
No.
Someone just came on. Okay. So we are. Okay, if you could stay mute until we get started and ask questions a little bit later. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of introduction to this webinar. I think some of you attended the first part of the physical activity webinar, but this is promoting physical fitness in school-age children and adolescents in pediatric physiotherapy. We have 3 great speakers today. I know we had 4. Dale Scalise-Smith was also one of our presenters for the first part of this webinar. But our speakers today are Manon Bloemen from the Netherlands. Manon, you want to wave to everyone? There she is. Okay. And Anu Kinnunen from Finland. Anu, there she is. And Maggie ONeil from the US. I think I have something right in, there we go. I'm not sure, is Maggie, there's Maggie. Good morning, Maggie. We're really excited for the presentation today. Lots of information about how to apply and promote physical fitness concepts. Again, got waves there. So I'm not going to take a lot of time to do the presentation because I know everybody wants to get started and wants to hear the information. Just a couple of logistics again. You can keep your video off if you want during the webinar. If you want to turn it on, you certainly can. There's no problem. But we do ask that you keep your audio off. And I've said it a couple of times because we do get a lot of background noise if the audios are on. There will be a time at the end for you to have questions. If you have questions for our speakers, if you would put your questions in the chat room, I will be keeping an eye on the chat room. And if there are questions that are similar, I probably will lump those questions together for our speakers to respond to. The audio, the webinar is being recorded. At some point in time, the IOPTP will be posting this so that our members can see it. Probably that won't be until the summer of 2023. There is a great focus symposium that is going to be presented at the WPT meeting in Dubai. That is extended content. It's a whole day, isn't it, Dale? Or someone can say about it, 5 hours?
About half day, Barbara.
Half day. That will be at the meeting in Dubai in June. So our recording will not be available until probably late summer. So if you have friends that could not participate in today's webinar and they asked you, was it recorded? You may tell them yes, but it will not be available for some period of time. There will be a PDF of the slides that will be available on the IOPTP website later. We'll send out announcements when that PowerPoint PDF is available. So I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, and I think Manon, you're on.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. Let me see if everything works here. Share. To go back to all of you now. Yes. Is it correct that everybody sees my presentation now?
Yes,
Can somebody say yes? Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, hello everybody. Wait, I'm going to move something, otherwise I cannot see my own presentation. Let me see. Yes, so hello everybody, and thank you for attending this webinar about promoting physical fitness in school-aged children and adolescents in pediatric physiotherapy. So today we have 3 goals, namely 1, understand the rationale for choosing appropriate physical fitness measures in pediatric physical therapy. 2, integrate FIT principles in physical fitness testing for children and adolescents. And number 3, discuss practical approaches to physical fitness testing and training for children and adolescents. I will discuss the first topic in this webinar about physical fitness testing in pediatric physical therapy. So my name is Manon Bloemen and I'm part of the HU University of Applied Sciences in Utrecht in the Netherlands. And together with my colleagues there at this university, and also together with our colleagues from the Wilhelmina Children's Hospital, Tim Takken, the Hoogstraat Rehabilitation, Olaf Verschuren, and Alice Kotte from the Fit Kids Foundation, we have developed several fitness tests that can be easily performed and used in PPT clinical practice. So first, we would like to point out the presumed relationships between fitness, physical activity, and health, as described by Bouchard et al. In 1994. So we know that increased fitness levels are positively related with health outcomes in both children with and without disabilities, and also in adolescents. Last webinar, we talked about physical activity in children with physical disabilities and how to increase physical activity, and also important personal and environmental factors. And today we are going to focus on physical fitness testing and physical fitness training. So how do we define physical fitness? Physical fitness is described as a state or a condition that permits the individual to carry out daily activities without undue fatigue and with sufficient reserve to enjoy active leisure. The ACSM describes it as a set of attributes a person possesses to perform physical activity. So Kaspersen describes two components of physical fitness, namely health-related physical fitness or health-related fitness and skill-related fitness. Health-related fitness consists of cardiorespiratory endurance or aerobic fitness, muscular endurance, muscular strength, body composition and flexibility. And skill-related fitness consists of agility, balance, coordination, speed, power, and also reaction time. And today, during the talk about physical fitness testing, we are going to focus on cardiorespiratory endurance, so the aerobic fitness tests, muscular strength, and also the skill-related fitness tests that are used to measure agility, speed, and power. First of all, I have a question. What kind of fitness tests do you use in daily clinical PPT practice? And we would like you to type your answer in the chat. And you can just do it during the presentation, and later on we can discuss that. So, safety first. Before assessing a child's physical fitness, you always have to check for contraindication. And one way to do this is to use, for example, the PAR-Q questionnaire. This questionnaire is freely available on the internet, and it gives you a good indication about several contraindications that can be present. Then, some reflections. When we are talking about physical fitness testing, we should think about the possibility in PPT practice. For example, the differences between lab tests versus field testing. Of course, gold standard lab tests are available to measure, for example, for VO2 peak for aerobic fitness. But if you want to do this, you need expensive equipment that most PPTs do not have. Furthermore, it is important to think about task specificity. What is the problem a child visits the PPT for? Is it for troubles during, for example, running during gym classes? Then the fitness level is preferably tested using a running-based test. If a child has troubles, for example, biking to school, then it's perhaps better to use a bike test. Furthermore, when choosing a test, you have to think about the possibilities you have in your own clinical practice. Is, for example, an appropriate treadmill available? And is the space you need for certain field tests available in your practice? And another aspect is safety. And here I mean, is it safe for children with certain disabilities to, for example, use a treadmill? Or is it better and easier for them to use field testing? We know, for example, that ambulating children with CP are better able to perform fitness tests using the field test, shuttle run test, than using a treadmill test because of feelings of security and the frequent use of orthotics in these children. Another aspect that I would like to discuss here is the difference between capacity versus performance. What do you want to measure and why? Measuring, for example, VO2 peak reflects a child's aerobic capacity, whereas using, for example, a shuttle run test with the outcome measure of total number of shuttles reflects more aerobic performance. If you would like to measure, for example, aerobic fitness, then monitoring heart rate in children is preferred. So you have an objective outcome of the intensity level of the test. We use a cut point of 180 beats per minute or higher to decide if a child performed maximum on an aerobic test. Of course, we know there's a wide variation, as you can see here in the presented plot. Some children are able to get as high as 220 beats per minute. We also know that there's a variation in peak heart rate depending on how a child performs the test. We know that you can measure higher heart rates in children that are running compared to children that are biking, and also compared to children using a wheelchair. The cut point for children using a wheelchair is not clear yet, as these children use their arm muscles instead of their leg muscles during the aerobic test, which can result in lower peak heart rates. However, we did also see children using a wheelchair test with heart rates as high as 220 beats per minute. Although there were also children with heart rates of about 170. If you want to measure a heart rate, different heart rate monitors are available. If a child has trunk deformities, using a heart rate monitor that you can stick to the chest may be very useful. When measuring heart rate during testing, always note the rest heart rate, the end heart rate, and the heart rate after 1, 2, or 3 minutes till the heart rate went to the resting heart rate again. If you do fitness testing in children, it is also very good to describe the reason why a child stops the test. This may be, for example, due to dyspnea, or maybe because of the legs that are tired or hurting, or the arms that are tired or hurting. And this provides you information that you can use during your clinical reasoning process. The ONeil scale of perceived exertion provides us with information about how tired the child is when stopping the exercise test. And different scales are available, for example, using a bike, but also one using running. And there are also scales available using smileys for children. And lastly, I would like to point out the influences of differences in, for example, the wheelchair, or differences in orthotics or Botox or surgery on the level of fitness. We know that these changes may reflect or may influence the levels of fitness when testing and retesting a child. So if you test and after an intervention retest a child, you should always look if there are differences in wheelchair, orthotics, Botox, etc. So now I will describe several fitness tests that are available and feasible for pediatric physical therapists in clinical practice. And of course, these are only a selection and other tests are available, but because of time, we just have to make a certain selection. So for aerobic fitness test, I will discuss the FitKiss treadmill test, the graded treadmill test specifically designed for ambulating children with spina bifida, several shuttle run tests for ambulating children with cerebral palsy, and shuttle ride tests. And all these tests are maximal aerobic tests. So the FitKiss treadmill test is developed for PPT daily clinical practice, as a lot of PPTs in the Netherlands have treadmills that have a maximum inclination that is not adequate for using, for example, a bruise test. And the bruise test is a widely known maximal exercise test in children. The FitKiss treadmill test is valid and reliable in children aged 6 to 18 years of age. The maximal inclination of the treadmill during the test is 15%, and the speed also increases during the test. The protocol is displayed here, and you can also find it in the article from Alice Cotta et al. In 2015 about the reliability and the validity. It is a maximal exercise test, so we use maximal encouragement during testing, and we prefer a heart rate of 180 or above. We also look for subjective signs for maximal exercise testing, such as sweating, blushing, and the degrees of coordination. In ambulatory children, we use, with spina bifida, we use the graded treadmill test to measure maximal aerobic performance. During this test, the inclination is set at 2%, and this inclination does not increase. So you only increase the speed during the tests. We have two protocols. The choice of the protocol depends on the distance that a child walks on a 6-minute walk test. If a child walks less than 400 meters on a 6-minute walk test, then you can choose the slower protocol, so starting at 2 kilometers per hour. If a child walks more than 400 meters on a 6-minute walk test, then you can choose the faster protocol, starting at 3 kilometers per hour. This is also a maximal aerobic exercise test. So again, you should use maximal encouragement. Look at the peak heart rate, which we would like to be higher than 180, and also look for the subjective signs of intensive exercise. If a child is not used to walking on a treadmill, and this influences the results of the exercise test on the treadmill, then make sure that you really practice walking and running on a treadmill. And if the child is able to do this at a good speed, then you can retest again. So for ambulatory children with cerebral palsy, different shuttle run tests are developed. And these shuttle run tests for ambulatory children with CP are derived from the original shuttle run test, but the distance and the speed are both adapted. In children with GMFCS level 1, with a starting speed of 5 km per hour and an increase of 0.25 km per hour. For children with CP GMFCS level 2, you can use the protocol starting at 2 km per hour and an increase of 0.25 km per hour. The distance that a child walks back and forth is 10 meters instead of 20 meters in the normal shuttle run test. So in these tests, children have to run back and forth between two lines with a determined pace. The determined pace is played by an audio peep. You can download the different audio signals, so the different audio peep signals for the protocols on the website using the link displayed in the blue box. The test stops if a child fails to reach the lines on time in 2 consecutive beeps within 1.5 meters from the line. If a child finds it difficult to pace his or herself, then the PPT can walk or run with the child to make sure that the pacing is correct, because we do not want that the child really runs, have to wait for a couple of seconds and then runs back. So you really want to pace it really nicely. You can also run together with the child to really encourage the child to do maximum performance. If you do that, then also do this during retesting, of course. This test can be performed individually. You can also do this test in groups. If you do the test in groups, then make sure by retesting, you also do it in groups, because sometimes group testing may influence the results that you get on a maximal exercise test. Again, maximal exercise test, so maximal encouragement is important, as well as heart rate and subjective signs. I would like to make one additional comment, because sometimes people use music during testing. And music during testing, yes, can work really stimulating. However, you should be careful using music when using a test like this that is paced on a certain speed, because sometimes the music influences the speed that a child walks or runs. So now we go to children who are using a manual wheelchair. For children who use a manual wheelchair, you may also use a shuttle ride test to measure aerobic performance. In children using a manual wheelchair, the protocol of GMFCS level 2 is used. So the starting speed of 2 km per hour with an increase of 0.25 km per hour per minute. And this test is performed in the same way as the ambulating children, meaning that the children turn their wheelchair 180 degrees when the front wheels pass the line. We specifically chose the 180 degrees turning, as this way of turning was the easiest for children in a wheelchair. It was easier for them to turn 180 degrees than using, for example, a cone that they had to ride along, so using a corner. Again, this is a maximal exercise test, meaning maximal encouragement and looking for heart rate and subjective signs. And so for the heart rate, we do not know yet the cut point that is that we should use in children using a wheelchair. Then we will proceed with skill-related fitness tests. We will discuss the muscle power sprint test, the 10 times 5 meter sprint test, and the slalom test. The muscle power sprint test reflects power, and the 10 times 5 meter sprint test reflects agility. So both the muscle power sprint test and the 10 times 5 meter sprint test are valid and reliable in ambulatory children with cerebral palsy, GMFCS level 1 and 2. In the MPST, you ask a child to run 15 meters as fast as possible. After the 15 meters, the child has 10 seconds to stop, turn, and prepare for the next sprint. And this will be repeated 6 times in total. You record every 15 meter sprint. And with the recorded times and the weight of the child, you can calculate the mean power and peak power. And there's an Excel available for calculating the mean power and peak power using the link in the blue box again. This is a sprint test, so maximal encouragement is really important. The 10 times 5 meter sprint test, a child has to run back and forth between 2 lines 5 meters apart for 10 times in a row with no rest. This is why this test reflects agility. A child may turn if one foot is on or crosses the line. So again, you record the time. And again, maximal encouragement is really important. And if you do the 10 times 5 meter sprint test, the last sprint, a child really has to cross the line. So not stop before crossing the last line. In children using a wheelchair, both the MPST and the 10 times 5 meter sprint test can be used. These tests are valid and reliable in children with cerebral palsy and spina bifida. And it's good to know that for the MPST, the total number of sprints is 3 for children with cerebral palsy and 4 for children with spina bifida and using a wheelchair. And this is because children with spina bifida were, in our population, faster than children with cerebral palsy who used a manual wheelchair. An additional test for agility is the slalom test. And in this test, the child slaloms between 4 cones, turns back in a straight line, slaloms once more, and turns back in a straight line. And each cone is 1.5 meters apart. The total amount of time is recorded in seconds. Again, these are maximal tests, maximal sprint tests, so encouragement is very important. Then lastly, I will shortly discuss the topic of muscular strength. Muscular strength is difficult to measure sometimes in children with disabilities because of the presence of a spasticity, for example. And that is why we also use functional strength measurements. For ambulating children with cerebral palsy, we often use the lateral step-up test, the sit to stand, and the attain stand through half-knee test. And in these tests, children have to perform as much repetitions as possible in 30 seconds, and the number of repetitions are noted. The scoring form, including the explanation of the test in English, can be found using the link in the blue box. Also, other functional strength tests are used in clinical practice. And when using these strength tests, it's important to realize the different aspects that are present during these tests, such as coordination problems, compensation, etc. And you should always keep these aspects in mind during your clinical reasoning process. Some reference values exist for children with disabilities. Reference values for ambulating children with CP, GMFCS level 1 and 2 are available in literature for the shuttle run test, the MPST, and the 10 times 5 meter sprint test. However, these reference values were published in 2010 and may be already old. A nice overview showed us in 2017 that the performance-based outcomes of the shuttle run test, the MPST, and the 10 times 5 meter sprint test increased in a period of 10 years. So this means that you have to keep this in mind when using these reference values in clinical practice. If you perform exercise testing in children using a manual wheelchair, be aware of the fact that there are many different types of wheelchair and that these wheelchair have influences on the performance of the fitness test. Also, a change in wheelchair settings may influence the outcome of physical fitness testing. Furthermore, make sure that the tire pressure is optimal. Fortunately, we found a lot of flat tires when testing children in a wheelchair, and this of course results in your outcome of testing. It also means that the tire pressure should be similar when retesting a child. And because of these challenges, there are no references available for children in a wheelchair yet. I would like to end underlining the importance of clinical reasoning. Clinical reasoning is essential in physical fitness testing in children with disabilities, because often we do not have any reference values, and the influences of mobility aids on physical fitness level is very important. So to wrap it up, safety first. Make sure there are no contraindications for physical fitness testing. There are many different physical fitness tests available. What do you want to measure? What is possible in your daily clinical practice and what suits the child? Do you want to do maximal aerobic fitness testing? Make sure that the heart rate is higher than 180. Look for subjective signs for exercise testing and use maximal encouragement. Do you want to do skill-related physical fitness testing? Again, maximal encouragement is very important. And I think creativity of the PPT is very important here. That's the end of my presentation. And now I think Maggie will continue. Let me see. I have to stop sharing. Wait. Stop share.
Thanks so much, Manon. That was great. Is it okay for me just to continue on, Barbara?
I'll let you go ahead and get started, Maggie.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't interrupting anything you wanted to say. Hi, everybody. I'm delighted to be here on this panel with my colleagues and with all of you. I'm Maggie ONeil. I am at UMass Lowell in Massachusetts, USA, where I have lab space in the health assessment lab here, and I teach in the pediatric content in our PT program. And I'm an active member of IOPTP, so please consider joining if you're not already a member. Barbara didn't make me say that. And my topic today, as Manon said, she's a tough act to follow, is to talk about our second objective for this webinar, which is integrating FIT principles in physical fitness training for children and adolescents in our physical therapy sessions. When we think about what type of fitness interventions we may be integrating into our PT plans of care, to go back to what Manon said, it is, are we doing health or skill-related fitness or combinations of those components of fitness? And it really, to me, is all based on what the goals of the child and parent are for the reason that they come to see us. The child can't keep up in class with his classmates. Is it gait speed? Will we look at interventions specific to muscular or cardio endurance, aerobic endurance to improve speed? Is it the child is at risk for falls because of postural control challenges? Will we look at balance, agility, and trunk strength? So what type of fitness intervention will match the goals that are being articulated by the child and the family? And are we writing them in as best we can in a smart format to see progress over time? When we talk about different fitness strategies, I think there are certain areas we have to review, and they are fitness principles, fitness phases, and fitness prescription. What do we mean by fitness principles? The ACSM, the American College of Sports Medicine, has identified 5 fitness principles that should be considered and integrated into our sessions as appropriate. Overloading the child's system. So to gain strength, we have to dose on strength. To gain aerobic capacity, we have to optimize the amount of that we dose. Similar to what Manon was saying, we might use maximum encouragement during the interventions to promote the child and motivate him or her. Progression, increasing gradually, so dosing over time, changing the amount. Specificity, if it's strength the child needs for the goal, then it's strength training. Is it muscular endurance or muscular strength? That would be something we'd have to tease out. Regularity, having the child work with us on these fitness interventions embedded in our PT regularly in supporting and helping the family do these kinds of activities. I know that can be a challenge sometimes, at least for me, to translate or carry it over in their home and community lives, which Anu will be talking about. And individuality, everyone is different. So trying to identify what the child likes to do to integrate that into their fitness sessions. In terms of fitness intervention phases, there's the warm-up, training, or exercise phase and the cool down. We're all aware of this in our own lives, I'm sure. So during the warm-up phase is to get blood flow to warm up those muscles. We're getting ready to train, exercise, or condition in that exercise or training phase. And the cool down, as Manon had talked about, is to bring the child back to their baseline in terms of their heart rate reserve or peak heart rate. And we can see the warm up and cool down are very similar, actually the same, that we're looking for in their heart rate responses. So if we have heart rate monitors, that's terrific, like Manon talked about. But if we can use rates of perceived exertion in what our clinic resources allow, that would be the next best thing. And how we determine our training levels really is guided by the child's fitness level, the attributes that child has coming to the session. Are they very deconditioned or not so deconditioned? Can we shoot for moderate or vigorous training intensities? Then when we look at fitness prescription, our FIT principles, frequency, intensity, time, and type. And we add an E to that sometimes to say for enjoyment, because we want to make it as enjoyable as possible for adherence, of course. So for strength training, American College of Sports Medicine recommends 2 to 4 sessions a week on frequency. Intensity really is determined by, we might be doing a repetition max test in the field. We might be doing a lab-based test if we can send a child to a lab from using equipment to determine what the weights, the reps, and the sets will be if they're doing a formal strength training, but we could also use that information in more functional strength training. The time or duration, how long? Most sessions are about 20 minutes, and usually usually the recommendation is 8 to 12 weeks, but our kiddos usually are more deconditioned, not always, but often. So it might be a 14 to 16 week set episode of care that we plan. And the type, what type of resistance training, again, what is it that the child can do, will do, wants to do, and how can we devise the strength training for that child? Aerobic training FIT principles, of course, what's recommended that everyone do aerobic conditioning 6 to 7 days a week. I am not suggesting that physical therapists would see a child that often. We can't, and quite frankly, I don't think we should, but can we help advocate and create that culture of activity so that what we do in the session can be carried over in some capacity in their home or community lives? The intensity for aerobic training really, again, depends on the child's aerobic health fitness when they come into the program. So you may start slow and progress to moderate to vigorous, depending on percentage of heart rate peak and the velocity in terms of timing of this. We don't have a lot on how fast they should go, but we want to get them to their peak heart rates and their at either the lower or more vigorous intensity. But adults should be doing 30 minutes a day, children up to 60 minutes, at 60 minutes a day, actually. And what type of aerobic exercise should the child do? Again, it should be large muscle groups with repetitive activity to enhance this aerobic capacity building or aerobic fitness building. And I would prefer to bike or swim than run. So it is depending on what the child would want to do. For anaerobic training, such as power training, which is becoming more popular in pediatric rehab, in my opinion, we see some high intensity interval training, HIIT training, and what is the FIT principles or fitness prescription for that? Well, recommendations on frequency, again, if you're going to integrate it into our physical therapy, would be 2 or 3 times a week. And this is a different kind of approach where it's a ratio of high exercise to recovery or rest. During the high exercise bout, children, we try to get the children at or above 80% their peak heart rate. And during the recovery or rest, not a true rest, but a recovery bout, they're not moving, 40 to 50% of their heart rate peak. So when we think about the time or duration, we have to think about this exercise recovery ratio. There are different types of ratios and rationale for them. It could be a 1-to-1, 1 minute of exercise, intense, 1 minute of rest. that could be variable from 1 to 4 minutes. The spring interval training is a 30-second high intensity and up to 4 minutes of rest. Again, that depends on the child's abilities and the goals of the power training or the HIIT training, and repeating the activity. Repeating the exercise or activity at least 3 to 5 times. And then the type, of course, is high intensity training. Before we embark on fitness interventions, I just caution all of us to be mindful of and adapt to the precautions and considerations that come along with the child's fitness level when they start the program and their condition and the signs and symptoms of condition and comorbid conditions associated with their diagnosis. Specifically around any cardiopulmonary condition, we may want to recommend a formal exercise test or get some physician guidelines, but we also want to consider the other systems that a child with disability may have challenges. The musculoskeletal system may have malalignment and coordination problems with their neuromuscular system. So we must consider the children that we know and what comes along with many of the conditions and diagnoses. But I'm going to stress, because I truly, truly believe it is critical to monitor vital signs before, and I think Manon alluded to it in her talk, before, sometimes during and after this intervention, to be sure heart rate, blood pressure, temperature, and respiratory rates are as they should be, so we don't see any signs or symptoms of any problems because of a fitness program. And in addition to that, we know in the US anyway that childhood obesity rates are 35% higher for kids with disabilities than those without. So we want to be mindful of a child's healthy weight status or unhealthy weight status, because that's going to impact their performance and their vital signs. Additionally, the whole world has unfortunately gone through this COVID pandemic, and children with disabilities do have high rates of COVID. So we want to be mindful of what those long haul COVID or post-COVID syndrome signs and symptoms are, which may also impact how we deliver and how they perform in a fitness intervention. So let's talk about some fitness interventions now that you may already be using strategies in your PPT sessions, or you may consider using it. Using the ICF Fit F-Words model, let's look at the fitness, the body function and structure interventions, and for examples, look at some strength, anaerobic or power interventions, as well as some aerobic interventions. Here's a 16, he might be 15 at the time, don't hold me to it, year-old boy, young man, GMFCS level 3, who's just showing us his hamstring strength in prone on the mat in the clinic. We can see that on the right, he at least has a Mayo muscle test level of 3. He can bring his leg, not easily, but he can bring it pretty much fully against gravity. On the left, we see that he cannot. He doesn't have a Mayo muscle tested grade of 3 moving against gravity, maybe a 2, or maybe I'd like to be generous and give him a 2+. He's a great kid. So then if we look at him, he wanted to do strength training. His goals were he's going to go to college next year from this larger campus, walking around, speed. He got his license. He's got to get in and out of his car. Walking forwards and backwards is important. And also no help in the bathroom. So he's got to learn how to navigate in a bathroom stall. So backward walking was part of his goal. So here he is with a 2.5 pound weight doing his reps on the right. I don't have a picture for the left. Sorry about that. The left we didn't put on a weight at first. We did eccentric strengthening, put him in the position of 90 degrees knee flexion, and then guided him down until he could do it on his own. And then we did start adding eccentric strength weight on the left hamstring. On the right, it's just a photo, but it's just to show that he went to a 4 pound weight. His program was a combined program. You'll see him in the water towards the end. 14 weeks, twice a week, he reached his goals. That was great. It was not easy for him, but he was committed to this, as was his mother. In the training progression for him, and his cognitive level is really such that he's in high school, he's going to college, so he can commit and he can attend fairly well. I mean, he's a teenager, it's always a challenge, but he can commit and attend. The training progression, generally speaking, in strength training to consider is after a child completes their last repetition, he was wearing a heart rate monitor through all his sessions. If the child's not wearing a heart rate monitor, look at that rate of perceived exertion. As Manon showed, this one for biking, running, and there's also for strength training as well, from Avery Feigenbaum's work. So if a child rates 6 or 7, that is really consistent on the whole, generally speaking, to 60 to 70% of peak heart rate. So again, heart rate monitor is better, more objective, but RPE scales are useful to look at how hard the kids, how intensely the kids are working in their strength training progression. For the exercise sequencing, we usually recommend large muscle groups first and then small muscle groups in the delivery of the strength training, and then going from agonist to antagonist exercises around those targeted areas and joints, and for us, lower extremity and hips that we usually target. Program variation is important for several reasons. Should be done systematically and varied over time to allow the child greater gains with different demands and challenges. Also, shouldn't be done within the first 8 to 12 weeks. Sometimes with our kids, 14 weeks. That teenager had a 14-week program, but the variation is important to decrease any risk of overuse injuries or boredom in the kids, because it becomes rote and monotonous for them. Some kids don't like that structured, formal, progressive resistive exercise. Fine. Can we come up with functional strengthening in different functional activities or play? Doing wall squats using a resistive band for hip abduction as well as quads and trunk strengthening. Can we do it in step ups and holding the position for balance and postural control while they're playing at a mirror? This was in a school. Can we do it with younger kids, maybe preschool age, where they're doing core strengthening? This child who's pushing a truck and knocking over Legos or Duplos is the same activity. She's going out and in for core and hip strength, rolling it out and rolling it back. Can't move your knees off the pony mat. And the same thing this young teen is doing. These cones were all lined up against the mat, and he's rolling the scooter board out and in to work on core strengthening. Can we do things like planks? This is actually a pre-post test just to see if there's changes in core by plank, and he lasts about 20. There he goes. That's the end of his ability to hold a plank, about 20 seconds. It's an exercise. It could potentially be a check-in to see how the kids are doing on other core strengthening. So some ideas around that. In terms of anaerobic training, I just want to bring our attention to 2 specific cases as examples. One is a case study of a young man with cerebral palsy, GMFCS level 4, non-ambulatory. He's in his wheelchair in this top picture, and he wanted to box. He wanted to improve his strength and power and go and get a boxing program. So a colleague, he's not my patient, a colleague of mine developed that program for him, and then a school-based program for children. This is, I think, one of Manon's colleagues in the Netherlands, and some of the exercises are shown here in the black and white montage of running with a weighted box, pushing a weighted chair, using a weighted vest, and walking using a weighted scooter in a school gymnasium. So in terms of a few specifics, the young adult male was 14 and a half. You can see when he wanted to start a boxing program, he wanted to get stronger and have more power. And he had been having some medical issues secondary to his cerebral palsy and other comorbidities. He started out 1 time a week frequency for an hour and a half to 2 hours, his duration. The type was a boxing program in his chair, and he also got involved. He's holding on to one of his free weights there and some weight training for his upper extremities. Over 2 years at the gym, he progressed to 3 to 5 times a week with his PT and his gym coach working together to adapt and progress his program. After 6 years, he was still doing this exercise program. It's become his exercise habit, and he has shown improved overall health and improved bone health. So this seems like it could be a meaningful health and energy enhancing type of a program. For the 22 children in the school-based program at the school gymnasium, these are higher level kids who are ambulatory at GMFCS levels 1 and 2. Here's the FIT prescription that was used: 3 times a week, 14 weeks, a 10-minute warm-up, a 35-minute exercise or training program in which the children did between 3 and 6 of some of those exercises you saw, and each was for 6 to 8 reps. Then followed up by a cool down of group game exercises using contextual stories of superheroes. That's really great to engage the children. What made this functional power training? The exercises were delivered using that ratio of exercise to rest or recovery. 25 seconds of exercise, 30 to 6 all out exercise as hard as they could in 30 to 50 seconds. So nearly a 1-to-1 ratio of exercise to rest. And again, the 6 to 8 reps for each of the exercises the children did in that training block or that conditioning block. The outcomes, thank you. I owe you, Manon, because she went through the outcomes that these kids did do, the muscle power sprint test, the 10-meter shuttle run, some of the GMFM 66, and then a 1-minute walk test, as well as lower extremity muscle strength. Outcome was children who did this functional power training versus those who had quote unquote standard or usual pediatric PT care. These kids did better on these fitness outcomes. So things to consider on integrating anaerobic or power training in our practice. For aerobic exercises, I know we all do this, so I'm kind of preaching to the choir. So just to quickly say, with aerobic exercises, we may do land-based exercises like sports drills. This is the little boy again, he's running the bases here. It's a baseball drill. We may do things like agility training through obstacle courses. We do these. I know we all do these in therapy. How can we deliver it in a way that is dosing according to these fitness principles, phases, or prescription to be more systematic in how we deliver these aerobic exercises to improve aerobic performance and fitness in the children. Or in aquatic-based programs, we could be using weights and noodles. Noodles you can do so much with, and they are not expensive. It is more expensive to get waterproof heart rate monitors. So the RPE, I've gone in the water with laminated RPE scales for kids to tell me right after a drill how they're feeling and how tired they are. I just bring it in the water. They expect that from me. So I try not to disappoint. So can we do aquatic-based programs on an individual or group level and consider some of the activities and equipment to help support that? This is again the young man who showed us his PREs on the mat, his hamstring strengthening. Here he, I didn't mean to have, I'm sorry. Here he is in the water. This is a HydroWorks pool, so the floor of it is a treadmill. That's nice. I wish I had one. But here he is at a clinic and he's practicing running and also trying to do backward walking. There's a lot to do there because of course he's truly not backward walking yet. But this is some of his aerobic training in his PT fitness program. Again, this was already discussed, but we could use treadmills depending on the child's ability to use treadmill versus overground in the clinic. In our interventions, as well as in our measures, a traditional treadmill, perhaps a partial body weight supported treadmill for this young man, this child, or 8-year-old actually, with CP. This is not a school-age child, but just to remind us that there are smaller treadmills for smaller children with the support of a parent. And something as sophisticated as the MotoMed, I've used these in clinics, certainly not in schools, haven't had that opportunity, where there's assisted or resisted or resistance given to the child with arm crank or with pedaling with the feet. So different kinds of equipment we may use. So we could take our strength, power, and aerobic training from a clinic and think about translating it into an activity-based intervention that may be clinic, community, or home-based. And I know Anu will talk more about this in the Finnish experiences, but I just wanted to remind us that when we're working to create this culture of fitness and activity, how can we take what we do in the clinic and promote it for the families at home? It's critically important. This is a great article, in my opinion, to think about what the child brings, their fitness level, what the task we're asking for, how we adapt it, and what's the environment in which we're asking the child to perform to promote this activity. We may consider going to the Youth Compendium of Physical Activities, where we can get MET values for youth on various activities, with a precaution, though, that this is really set up for children who are typically developing. For example, volleyball, if you look up volleyball for 6 to 9-year-olds, this has a MET value of 5, meaning that playing volleyball, you will have 5 times higher the energy expenditure than you would at rest, the ratio of activity to rest for the MET value. However, be with caution, because we know our children with various disabilities and conditions, with that come different system challenges. So to what we heard already, that you want a heart rate of 180 or above to look at maximum testing. If you're trying to dose an intervention at 50, 60, 70, or 80% of max or peak heart rate, what is that heart rate for a child with cerebral palsy? Well, in some of the work done in Manon shop, there's a specific article with recommendations that above 180, when you do the shuttle run test, to make sure you get to that max or peak heart rate, but using 194, which was a kind of a mean heart rate for multiple kids with CP, would be better to use than that 220 or 208 minus 0.7 times age. So using 194 would be, okay, I'm going to do 50, 60, 70% of that. If I can't do a shuttle run test on the particular child I want to design this intervention for. And again, space and equipment might not allow me to do a full shuttle run test. It's similar with kids with Down syndrome, because we know many of them have to have a cardiac defect, and which is repaired early in life. But because of that, we're more cautious, and we'll use a peak or max heart rate peak of 170 to 180 to dose their interventions on 50, 60, 70, or 80%. That's discussed nicely in the Brockport manual for training for kids with disabilities, and which is Joseph Winnick's work. And not only cardio, but again, talking about their neuromuscular and musculoskeletal systems. What do we need to be aware of in creating these programs? Other equipment out there for aerobic fitness improvement are we're lucky, there are lots of different kinds of hand and foot crank bicycles and tricycles. And I haven't used these unfortunately here in the US much, but I know the Frame Runner is a popular piece of equipment for aerobic participation in kids in the community in the Netherlands, and I don't know about Finland, so I won't say. Other things that we do use are physical activity to enhance physical activity are things like active video games and virtual reality, just to try to get the children doing more activity and seeing what it does for fitness. This 17-year-old boy, GMFCS level 3, is wearing a heart rate monitor and is wearing activity monitors while he's playing a custom video game. And yes, indeed, he did get to moderate, not vigorous, intensity of physical fitness, aerobic intensity during the game. So could this be something for home and school? Perhaps to break up sedentary behavior, if not to enhance physical activity and fitness levels. In terms of community-based sports, I would invite you to look at Clutterbuck's work on the participation in physical fitness vis-a-vis a sports program called Sports Stars. Just to sum up what she did, once a week for 8 weeks, frequency, and asking the kids to work. I don't know that they worked hard, so it was a soccer program, so the intensity was high. It was an hour a week for 8 weeks, and those in the sports program versus usual care showed better outcomes on some of the measures that Manon talked about to improve their fundamental movement skills. So this was truly for kids with milder cerebral palsy to get them to a higher functional level for sport participation. Another resource for community is Funterville's, which is high intensity training with really fun stories. I use the popcorn story too much, but I like it. And so it's high intensity training where you ask the child to do 20 seconds of all out activity, these 4 activities of get the popcorn kernels, pop the corn with a jump, scoop the popcorn, and then run in place, run it to the classrooms, used in classroom settings. This PDF, you can get there are 15 or 18 different Funterville's that you can do, and you can get all of them with this PDF, and the article by Catherine Ma is there. So something to consider as a resource for high intensity training in a playful type of activity in a PT or a school environment, clinical school environment. I'm preaching to the choir right now, so thank you, choir. We know that when we integrate any kind of functional activity and mobility with kids, we may have to assist the child. Wall squats for that 8-year-old at GMFCS level 3 with help of his walker, a peanut against the wall, and this was a group activity fitness program, and one of our helpers, a PT student in this case. Over here, he can't stand and swing a bat with his walker, so we tee up out a cone so that he can play. And some kids with poor sitting balance or challenged sitting balance, we take some seats and screw them, as long as they're not too tippy, to scooter boards to adapt that equipment. Last but not least, how do we deliver these interventions? Will coaching or motivational interviewing help us engage the child to get them to commit to and be motivated to be in a fitness program in physical therapy? I say it can work. And here's some resources for us. And then in terms of tools to keep track of what the kids are doing and for them to have some self-determination, can they or their families keep a low-tech notebook, logbook, or do we have more high-tech resources, activity monitors, mobile apps, or videos for the children to help them with their programs? So delivery of these interventions in a way that can be motivating and to try to promote the child's self-management and adherence. I think that's all I have to offer for just snippets of ideas for integrating fitness into our PT interventions. And thanks everybody for your attention. And I will turn my sharing off. And I did have a question that I sent to you, Dale, for the end, to promote some discussion on the chat board. But I will turn it over to Anu. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie and Manon, for your fantastic presentations. And hi to you all. My name is Anu Kinnunen. I come from Finland. Hope you can see my presentation now. So we move on to objective number 3, discuss practical approaches to physical fitness testing and training for children and adolescents. And my purpose is to give you some few short presentation and examples from Finland, how we do the fitness testing and how we use the health promotion strategies to promote physical fitness and activity to our children. So as we have learned now today that physical fitness is a key indicator on health in children and adolescents and can predict the health status in later phases of an individual life. And as we learn it today, the physical fitness is very important to our children in participating in community activities. And we have now learned, thanks to Manon and Maggie, how can we measure it and how can we train it. And now I will give you some few examples from Finland on fitness testing, how we do it. And as you all know, I think in your countries, you also have the different kind of recommendation of assessment of functional ability in different diseases. Here I have given you an example of cerebral palsy, just few tests they have recommended to use us in pediatric physiotherapy. As you can see in the activity level, there is recommended to use GMFM66 PCI, 6 minutes walking test and timed up and go test. And then body function and structures, other tests. Of course, it's important to know, as Manon told you, what you are about to test, what is the purpose of testing. So that will be, of course, the point that why you choose the test you are using. And the other point of view, what I wanted to give you is that, of course, if we want to test in wider perspective of all our children, if you want to find the children who are risk in having a disability, we use different kind of field tests. In Finland, we have traditionally used the Eurofit, AlphaFit, FitnessGram, and PreFit test, for example. But a few years ago, we started in Finland to develop a fitness testing for all of our children to find out what kind of physical ability or capacity our Finnish children have, and then to find out the children who we really need help or support in physical ability. And MOVE is a national follow-up and feedback system utilized to measure physical function of 5th and 8th grade students. So this is used for all of our children. And this has been developed by Jyväskylä University, and it has been funded by our Ministry of Education. So this is also a tool for our interprofessional collaboration, because these results are also checked with not just the teachers, but also the nurses, medical doctors, and physiotherapists. Physios, of course, don't see all of our children's results, but those who really have low points in this testing. I will tell you shortly the process of MOVE testing. But the main purpose of this MOVE system is particularly to assist student and his or her parents to understand the relationship between physical function, health, well-being, and studying. So these testing and the results are carefully gone through with the students and also with the parents. And these are defined by daily physical demands that were recognized in the developing process. So this is the equal protocol of physical functioning test that includes these tests you can see on the left side of this screen. And there is, of course, our teachers and physiotherapists have an education to this MOVE system on these tests. There is also available online manuals and videos where you can check before you're about to do the test. You can go back and check what is it done and what are the quality points or key points on quality of the testing. There is also a manual prepared for the applied measurement. So if some student is not able to do the test the traditional way, there is also a optional choice to perform the test. So for example, if you are in a wheelchair, you can do this test for adapted way. And if there is some student that is not unable to complete the MOVE measurement as even applied, there can be chosen another different measurement for him. So I will shortly walk you through the MOVE process. So like I told you, every teacher and physios are educated on this test protocol, and the teachers mainly do the test to the students on 5th and 8th grade. Sometimes physios are doing the test with the teachers, especially if there is someone who needs adapted version of the test. And then the teacher gives the individual feedback based on the results to the child or the adolescent. There is a smiley face, and then there is, of course, an oral and written feedback for the child. And the results are recorded in the national system, and then the information is transferred to the healthcare provider with the guardian's permission. And then the health nurse discusses the results with the child and the guardian, part of a comprehensive health check. And in this, if the child has under 9 or under the points, when 19 is the maximum point score, if he has 9 points or under, then the health nurse guides the child to the physiotherapist. Of course, in the comprehensive health check, if the child or the parent says that they have something they want to talk about, or they have some kind of worries, and they would want to have a physiotherapy check. So of course, that is one reason where they can go to the physiotherapy clinics. And then the teachers use the results in teaching planning, and physios, if there is students who have physiotherapy also, the physiotherapist also can be planning with the teacher together about the activity in the classrooms. And then these results are also used in the group and school specific way, for example, on developing on the school environment to be more active. Of course, and the main thing is that student gets the ideas on evaluating and promoting her own performance. So this is the way that we can find out the children that are at risk of disabilities or who need the physiotherapy expertise to promote the physical fitness. And as we know, we have learned, this is not just based on the MOVE, but on other results. As we can see, our adolescents really are the point that we should worry about their overall physical activity levels. Because if you look at the right side of this screen, you can see generally our children, boys and girls together, 78% have achieved the goal of overall physical activity, engaging in at least 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity at least 4 days a week. And if children have some kind of disabilities, only 61% achieve this goal. And if you look at the left side of this picture, you can see that 16 and 18 years old achieve this goal less than 20%. So I think we have a lot of work to do with this still. So what do we do? Of course, we give them information, what to do, as you heard it in Maggie's presentation. We try to offer them information, ideas, how to gain more physical activity level. And then we try to construct the interprofessional collaboration in our school. This is infographic has been made in our IOPTP team. And this is a very good information package, because I don't know how it's in your countries, but in my country, our school system has not perhaps recognized enough the physiotherapist expertise to promote school-based health promotion services, or how we can use our expertise to increase physical fitness levels or physical activities in schools. So this is ongoing process in Finland. But then in the end, like Maggie told, that it comes to the actions we do with the children and the families, and how we do the health promotion action. What kind of health promotion actions do we do with the families in our physiotherapy? What kind of tools or methods do we use to increase their awareness of their own health behaviors, on their own health actions, or how they think about their own physical activity levels? And of course, we use individual methods and ways to design the interventions that we do with the children and the families. But I think the physiotherapy, I don't know what you think, but I think physiotherapy is physical training in physiotherapy prepares us to our community lives, in our participation, in our community activities. So it's important that we know what our community can offer. Is there group interventions, or what kind of individual interventions can we offer them to be more active in their personal lives outside of the therapy sessions? And one of the things that our Finnish therapist has many times underlined, that sometimes it's difficult to be aware of what kind of services our community can offer regarding to the physical activity, because there is so much going on, developing processes, developing groups at the same time. So sometimes it's hard to see the whole picture, what the community or town can offer to a child who needs the physical activities in their daily lives, for example, hobbies. So one of my Finnish example is the PAPAI program, which is PAPAI. I don't know, last time we talked about a little bit last webinar about this, but PAPAI is a personal adapted physical activity instructor who is in our every town. We have this PAPAI, and they are aware of all kind of hobbies or leisure activities the community can offer. So all the participants who come this program, you get your own PAPAI who can help you find a suitable sport hobby. He mates you with the tryout plan, and then acts as a supporting person during the tryouts. And sometimes our physiotherapist also comes along with the tryouts, because sometimes they have to think about, or they can help out the way to participate in the tryouts or the hobby, help them find the ways to participate in different kind of actions. And in few years, over 500 children with disabilities have participated in this program, and the results have been very, very good. It have increased the knowledge about the physical activity and suitable sport options. And most of their physical activity levels have increased by this PAPAI program. And the collaboration between instructor and therapist have been very essential, because the therapist can contact the area's papais, or the children or the families can also contact the papais. So there is always one person who contacts and help you with the community service regarding to the hobbies and leisure time activities. There is one video, I won't show it to you because of our time, but you can look it, you can see the link from the presentation, send it you after this webinar. So the point to consider, to take home message could be that what are your actions to increase the physical fitness of our children with disabilities or risk of disabilities in their lives? What kind of actions do you do to support them to be more active in their daily lives? And you can type it into the chat if you want, or you can ask questions. And here are the references. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Anu. I think that great presentation from our faculty today. If there are any questions, if you would type them into the chat. And I think, Manon, you had a question that you wanted everyone to respond to. If you would pop back on and pose your question, because I don't think anybody has posted anything yet. Okay, there's a couple of questions that have come up in the chat. And this one is for Anu. How is your PAPI program funded?
Thank you for the question. I answered to the chat that it is funded by our government.
Okay, that would be good for everyone to see that.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's another question, and I'm not sure who wants to respond to this. Do you have any suggestion or experience about the activity for GMFCS level 4 and 5 children while they are in the schools? Because in my location, these children do nothing in the class with a physical fitness. And my expectation, I hope they would be able to interact within the group in their school. So that is, so whoever wants to respond to that.
I could start, Barbara, if that's okay, Manon
That's
and
fine.
Anu. So I think that if, again, equipment, resources and whatnot, I don't know what's available where you are, but if a child at level 4 or 5 is able to stand in a gait trainer, that can be a really useful piece of equipment to have the child engaged in the school gym or the school function room or the school yard with other children to help the child learn to propel. I am not going to call it ambulation because it's mobility. It's not necessarily ambulation, but the child can then participate and propel the chair. With my colleague here in Boston, there's been kids at levels 4 and 5 who have been using gait trainers and who have been able to, and wearing heart rate monitors, and have been able to increase their distance in mobility in a gait trainer and get their heart rates closer to a moderate to vigorous level, and thus participating with other children in the school. I don't know if that's a reasonable suggestion for your school.
Anu or Manon, do you have any suggestions?
I agree with Maggie, and I see that Kylie or also made a nice comment about this, I think, in the chat. And especially in children with GMFCS level 4 and 5, in Holland, we use frame runners much more often because this is a really nice mobility aid that these children can use, and we know that physical activity levels really go up if they use this kind of mobility aids. But I know that they're not available already in every country. But yeah, using mobility aids, different kind of mobility aids, I think is a very good opportunity.
I think for us, I have nothing to add. We also use the frame runners in Finland, but that was a good question.
Absolutely. And I agree. And I don't know if people who are out there in this audience, thank you again for attending, but I have found among colleagues here in my area, my region of the US, that insurance coverage of a frame runner has been challenging, and I don't know that families afford them. So if people have ways of getting them for families, that would be great to share too. So.
Okay, if everyone would look in the chat, Manon has put in the question that she asked. What type or what kind of physical fitness test do people use in their daily clinical practice? I see some of you are popping in. I see that walk around the block, swimming, 6-minute walk test.
I think these are great ideas, if I may jump in. Oh, there's a 30 seconds to staying in the bot. Again, I was the intervention person. I'm going to leave the measurement to you and tag you're it, Manon. But with the walking around the block, one thing that we have in US and I'm sure is in other countries is the annual walk to school day. And some kids in some regions of different countries, they live so far, they got to take a bus to school. But I propose, why not a monthly walk around the schoolyard and walk around the school neighborhood versus an annual walk to school, and turning that into more of a, if it's possible in the school setting, or, you know, obviously not so much in the clinic setting, to turn the activity into something we have codified, we institutional. This is now, we do this once a month. A colleague of mine who's school-based, she talked to the principal, and once a week was a message on vegetables, and once the next week was a message on activity and fitness. That every week the principal agreed for a message in the school over the PA system for the kids to create this environment of let's move and be healthy and be fit. I think that's a great idea if it's possible in your clinic or community settings.
Say some other answers to the activities, a 14-week program of 3 times a week session. They like that. Do the kids tend to continue this after they finish the program, or do they go back to being sedentary? We tried to set this up once for 6 weeks, but compliance was terrible. So how do you keep the compliance?
It really is challenging. And I think that the more if we can, you know, do this self-care management so the kids take on what they want to do. One of the things that I think is somewhat successful is, so to answer the question, no, a lot of the kids don't continue, especially at that level that they're during clinical training or in a program in the community, in my experience. However, when we can identify, again, this was around the Boston area, identifying a YMCA and a Boys and Girls Club that was near the hospital and near the kids' neighborhood, so that when we were done with therapy, the PT, not me, my colleague, actually went to the YMCA and created a program with the coach at the YMCA, and this teenage boy and a teenage girl continued their program with their health coach at the YMCA, who worked with their PT upon discharge to continue a community program. That was successful. I wouldn't say 100% successful, but pretty successful for some of the kids. So that may be a way to support the transition.
Okay, we also have a couple of responses that someone uses the Children's Assessment of Participation Enjoyment, CAPE, as one of the measurement tools. Looks like another 6-minute walk test, the time run test. And testing is challenging when working with children with significant intellectual disabilities. Okay. A couple of people said that there was close collaboration with PE teachers as well.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Okay, any other responses? Okay, while you're typing in, let me say, I'll go ahead and put in the website, or if you want to write this down, the website for the IOPTP, it's www.ioptp.org. Very easy. That's our website. And copies of the PDF of the PowerPoint will be placed on our website within the next, Dale, week or two. As soon as I get that
Yes,
from our,
absolutely. We'll get both of those posted up in the next week.
we'll get those posted up so that you can have a copy. I know the presentation was so interesting, people couldn't be writing all of this down as you were talking. So we'll make sure that we get that PDF up for everyone. Again, check our website. That's where it will be. Okay. Just a couple of more comments. Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to mute for just a minute. Dale, you want to make a couple of comments?
Yes, absolutely, Barb. Our speakers have done such a great job. I think I saw some more comments in here in the chat when we're talking about considerations for training fitness programs in preschool children and children with disabilities. I think that is a great topic, and we had to identify what we were able to include in this webinar and what we weren't. And so I will take this back to the IOPTP board and to the committee reviewing these for the section on for the education programming, and look at how we can add perhaps a future program to ensure that we're addressing the needs of preschool children, because we know this is a lifelong learning activity and we want to start very young with children and their families. So encouraging children early in life is certainly important, and we're acknowledging that. We just had to decide what we could and could not do. So I think that most of the other comments are about the participants' grateful responses about what a great job our presenters have done. I just want to see if anyone on the presentation group has any last minute any comments to add to the group, or if we would suddenly just feel like we have maximized the opportunity and look forward to a future encounter with all of you, and the hope that you'll see this team presenting at World Physio in Dubai, June 2nd to the 4th. With that, I think
Just a couple more comments.
sure, go right ahead, Barb.
I want to thank everyone for responding to the emails that I sent out to you to direct you to the link to this webinar. Many of you, I think, have already contacted me about our next webinar. Our webinar number 4 for the year will be on November 22nd, and it will be on interventions for babies born preterm. Our team, we have Kine Johansson and then 2 physios from Australia. So it's going to be a little bit early. For some of you, that today was not so early. So the time will be very, very early since we have presenters from Australia as well as from Finland. So if you email me, we posted information about that webinar on our Facebook page. Email me, and then I will send a link. It's imperative that you use that SurveyMonkey link to get the registration form. I know I reminded a number of you today, but that's fine, because we have a two-part process so that we know exactly who is registering for the course. So again, our time is almost up. Thank you so much for attending. Those of you who are not in countries that have an organization that's a member of IOPTP, we'd love to help you become members of the IOPTP. Right now, we have 32 member organizations representing almost 15,000 physios across the world. So we would love to help everyone else that wants to become members of the IOPTP. So again, thank you so much for attending today. And again, if you want to attend the November 22nd, send the email to my email, secretary.ioptp@gmail.com. Any last comments, Dale, Anu, Manon, or Maggie?